Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Smith. I am a director of MBA Admissions at NYU Stern, the NYU Stern School of Business. Thank you for joining me today to learn a little bit more about Stern's application to our MBA programs. I hope to spend the next 30 minutes demystifying the application a little bit and definitely providing you all with some tips and tricks for how to put forward your best application. So I'm going to go through a quick presentation about our application, again, providing some tips and tricks along the way. If you have any questions about the admissions process, feel free to type them into the comments, and I will do my best to address as many questions as possible as we go along. Quick overview of Stern and our MBA programs. At Stern, we offer 3 full-time MBA programs, the first of which being our 2-year full-time MBA. This is your hallmark MBA program, 2 years, that very traditional US MBA program where you spend a year in academics at Stern. Students spend a year over the summer, or actually the summer semester interning and then return for their second year. However, we do have 2 one-year MBA programs. These are our focused MBA programs, the Andre Ku Tech and Entrepreneurship MBA and the Fashion and Luxury MBA. So these are for those students who are really interested in the intersection of these industries and business. Again, these are focused one-year MBA programs. I want to mention that everything I'm going to speak to today and the application applies to all 3 of these programs at Stern. One more quick word before we jump into the application itself. I want to spend a moment talking about Stern's core value of IQ+EQ. What I mean here is at Stern, we are looking for the right combination of students that have those book smarts, those intellectual capacities, as well as emotional quotient. EQ, emotional quotient, I like to define as soft skills such as leadership and leadership potential, self-awareness, an ability to work on diverse teams, the ability to lean into conflict, and also knowing when it's appropriate to step forward and lead an initiative or lead a team, but also knowing when it's appropriate to maybe take a step back and let someone else lead and grow their skill set in that capacity. So I mention this because this idea of IQ+EQ, I think you'll see resonates and shows up in multiple places throughout the application at Stern. So as you are preparing your application, I recommend that you keep this idea of IQ+EQ in the back of your mind and try and emphasize in your application where this quality, this value of Stern shows up. All right, so the application itself. Broadly speaking, at Stern, we evaluate your applications across a number of different areas, different verticals, and I'll be going through each of those. The first of which I would like to speak about is academics. So this is where we are assessing your academic readiness for an MBA program, and especially a rigorous MBA program like Stern. We want to make sure that all of our students are able to succeed in the classroom. So this is where that IQ piece comes in, right? We want to be confident that you will be a contributing member to the classroom experience and make the most out of the academics, both in the classroom for yourself, learning as much as you can, but also creating a vibrant community, classroom community with your fellow classmates and the professors. I mention that because at Stern, most of our classes, there will be a lot of group work, a lot of projects. You'll certainly be learning from your classmates, so we want to make sure that you have or you are eager to contribute to that experience and that environment. What we'll be looking at from a very practical perspective is your undergraduate record or any other graduate studies you have already pursued. Quick word of advice here, and perhaps a word of comfort. At Stern, we know that your undergraduate record is set in stone. It is the one piece of your application that you can no longer influence. And I only mention that to say that if you are in the situation where maybe your grades are not what you wish they were, or you had a tough semester or a tough year in your undergraduate studies, don't feel like that's a total detriment to your application. Again, we at Stern know that that is the case for some students, and there are many other places where we can evaluate your academic readiness. One of those being the standardized test. At Stern, we accept a number of tests: the GMAT, the GMAT Focus, which is launching soon, the GRE, the Executive Assessment, and if you have taken a MCAT, LSAT, or a dental entrance exam at any point, we will also accept those. We believe any of them are good indicators of your academic potential. I also will say that we have no preference for which test you take or how many times you take it. And I mention that because some students might study for the GMAT, take it, and realize maybe the GRE is a test that is best suited to my test taking style, and submit a GRE as well. Or maybe, someone takes a GRE or an executive assessment 2-3 times. If that's the case, that's totally okay at Stern. We are really concerned with your highest overall test on any one given test date. So like I said, if you take the test, would think you can do a little better, there's no harm in studying and registering for another exam date and submitting a second test with your application. If English is not your primary language or the language that was used in your previous academic institutions, we will also ask for a TOEFL or an IELTS. I'll also mention at Stern, we will accept the Duolingo English test. And then finally, it's not mentioned on the screen here, but I do want to mention that for this admission cycle, the 2023-2024 admission cycle, NYU Stern is offering a avenue by which you can request a standardized test waiver. If you are if you are interested in that, definitely visit our website. But in short, we are asking for a few materials. It's a brief form for you to fill out to demonstrate your academic readiness for an MBA program. So again, if you fill out that form and you are approved, you're able to submit your application to our MBA programs without a standardized test. Final thing before moving on, I do want to mention that even if you are approved for a standardized test waiver, it really does only benefit you to submit that standardized exam if you happen to already have it, or if you happen to take it anyways. At Stern, we want to do everything we can to help you put forward your best application. So for some students, that standardized test waiver is exactly that. But for other students, a standardized test might really be a value add to their application. So whether you have a waiver or not, I definitely recommend submitting all tests you have taken, because again, we are just going to consider your best score on any one given test date. So there's no detriment to submitting multiple exams if you have them. The second area in which we will evaluate your candidacy for Stern is this professional bucket. And what I mean by here is everything from your prior successes in your career so far and the things that you have accomplished in your career so far. We're looking for a history of success, but also your career aspirations. I imagine all of you are interested in an MBA program because you want to make some type of transition in your field or in your career, or advance your career to a level in which an MBA will really help you to achieve that goal. So we want to know about that as well in your applications. Some of the materials we will look at here is your resume. In general, I recommend you to submit this as if you were applying to a job, your professional resume. But I really want you to take a critical eye to the resumes that you are submitting. Again, we're looking for a history of success, and we want to see the accomplishments that you have so far in your career. So highlight those in your resumes. For each bullet point or each job that you've had, definitely take the time to emphasize the value add to your team, your organizations, or the companies that you work for. What is the unique value that you've added? And where possible, quantify those things, right? If you have increased sales or have implemented a cost savings initiative, for example, quantify those. It really helps to provide scope to the work that you do, and really emphasizes to the admissions committee, again, what is the key things that you have done for those institutions and those organizations that have been a benefit. We'll also look at your EQ endorsement or EQ endorsements. For this application cycle, we are asking our applicants to submit a required 1 EQ endorsement. You are able to submit more than one, but we only ask for 1. Ideally, this endorsement will come from your current supervisor, presumably because that is the individual who knows you best and can speak to your most recent achievements and accomplishments in the workplace. However, there might be situations, right, where your current supervisor is not the most appropriate person to speak to your successes. For example, if you have a new manager, or if informing your employer that you're applying to business school might put a promotion in jeopardy or something like that, it is totally okay to ask a prior supervisor. Even though you are not writing your endorsement yourself, of course, you can certainly influence your endorsement and help your endorser to write the most positive recommendation that they can. And the way to do this, and that I recommend you do, is first and foremost, give your endorser ample time to write their recommendation. We'll be reviewing the application deadlines in a few moments. Give them at least 6 weeks. Ask them to write that endorsement at least 6 weeks before the deadline by which you intend to apply. But also make sure to go out to coffee or lunch with that person, or have a Zoom meeting with that person, and talk to them about your motivations for applying to business school. What do you want to do professionally upon graduating from an MBA program? Also remind that individual of some of the projects you've worked on, some of the accomplishments you've had at work. Chances are, those things are much more readily available in your memory than they are theirs. But if you talk to them about those things and remind them of those things and talk about your motivations for applying to business school, those stories and those anecdotes will be more readily available in their minds as well. It also helps to create a really nice narrative, so to speak, in the application if some of the things that the endorser is writing about echoes some of the things that you've written about in your essays. So transitioning to the essays, at Stern, we will ask you to submit a professional aspirations essay, or statement, I should say. It's a short statement. And simply all we ask are, what are your short-term goals for the MBA program? Exactly that. That's all you need to answer. What is the industry you'd like to work in, the function, potentially some roles that you are interested in, or post-MBA employers. Be as specific as you can in this short statement. We're really just looking for the quick highlight version of why an MBA, professionally speaking. I will mention that this is something, and we'll speak about interviews in a moment as well, that we will definitely dive into the interview process. So it is only to your benefit to really research the post-MBA career that you would like to pursue. Research it as much as possible, whether it's web research, speaking with Stern students or Stern alums, speaking with alums of your undergraduate institution who are in that field that you would like to go into, or in those roles. So definitely do your research, because although you might not have the space to speak to it in your professional aspiration statement in the application itself, should you be invited to interview, we will definitely want to know a lot more about why you want to pursue consulting or investment banking, work at a startup, or whatever your goals might be. And finally, the final category by which we evaluate your application is this personal bucket. In short, this is just what makes you you. Stern is an incredibly diverse and vibrant community. And this is where you get to show a little bit about what makes you special, what is unique to you, and what is a little bit of that vibe that you are going to bring to the NYU experience. This is largely done through some of the essays. We have our change essay. We ask you to select a word and put it into Stern's tagline of change, dare it, dream it, drive it. So for example, you can choose, change, embrace it as a word. and write about what that means to you, how it has shown up in your life or your career so far, and how you will embrace that personal tagline while at Stern. Here, we're not looking for anything in particular other for you to do a little bit of reflection on change and what it means to you, and again, what you will contribute to the community at Stern. And then our final essay is the Pick 6 essay. Here we ask for you to describe yourself to your fellow classmates and to Stern using 6 images and corresponding captions. And here we want to you to describe your interests, your hobbies, your passions, again, those things that make you who you are, and just show those to us through images that you've selected to show the admissions committee. This part of the application, I will say, is meant for you to be fun to fill out. So definitely have fun when you are selecting these images. And my biggest piece of advice, again, it's in line with the change essay. We're not looking for any one thing in particular. We're really looking for some things that are unique to you. And so what I mean by that is think about the other things that you have been able to show us in your application, right? You may have already been able to show us what some of your academic interests are. You've definitely had the chance to show us what some of your professional interests are. So I urge you to use this essay and these 6 images to show us a little something new, a little something different. A lot of your Stern experience is going to be outside of the classroom and outside of even career development, building relationships with your classmates, with the administrators, with the faculty members. And a big part about building relationships, in my opinion at least, is bringing all of your whole self to those relationships, your interests and your hobbies and your passions and everything that comes with that. So show us what some of those things are here. And then the final piece of the admissions process, where we will assess this as well as many of the things that I've already spoken about, is the interview. So interviews at Stern are by invitation only, and they are required for our full-time MBA programs. So every single person who is admitted to our full-time programs has sat for an admissions interview. These interviews are conducted by admissions committee members or admissions committee representatives. So what that means is these are not alumni interviews or student interviews. They are representatives of the admissions committee who have read your application in its entirety and are really prepared to dive in a little bit deeper. Again, so for example, one of the things that we'll dive into is your goals for the MBA program. We'll take what you've already shown us in your application so far, and we will just want to learn more. So for that reason, review your application prior to sitting for your interview and be prepared to share more details about your aspirations, more details about your experience so far in the professional world. And also prepared to speak about what at Stern excites you the most, or what opportunities at Stern you would like to take advantage of. Finally, I'll mention that the interview, I like to say it's really more of a conversation. It's definitely an opportunity for you to come prepared and ask your questions of us as well. You're very much so interviewing Stern just as much as we are interviewing you. The MBA program is much longer than 2 years, right? This is a community and a network that will stay with you for the rest of your career. So we want to make sure that you feel good about the decision to join Stern or any other MBA program. And a huge piece of that is getting your questions answered as well, learning a little bit more about these programs, the type of student that attends our programs at Stern. And we want to make sure that you see yourself being a part of that community as well. All that to say, definitely come to the interview with questions for us. We will be prepared to answer them. All right, so I have our application deadlines on the screen here. I will highlight that for all of our full-time MBA programs, the application deadlines, or the first application deadline rather, is September 18th. So coming up in just under a month. Number one question I tend to get around deadlines is, do I need to submit my application for the first application deadline? Is there an advantage to submitting my application for the first deadline? The answer is plainly, squarely, no. Really the best thing that you can do to enhance your candidacy is wait to apply until your application is the strongest. A strong application is a strong application whether it's submitted in September or whether it's submitted in April, and that is the honest truth. So if that means if you wait a little while or if it takes a little bit longer to really perfect your essays or retake that GMAT or GRE or executive assessment one more time and improve your score, if that means waiting a month and applying in October or waiting a few months and applying in January, I definitely recommend that is the case. Because your best odds for a good outcome with Stern is going to be to wait to apply until your application is the absolute strongest it can be. All right, and then finally, if you have any questions about anything I spoke about today, or if you want to get in touch with us at Stern, here is our contact information. The admissions office can be reached at Stern MBA at stern.nyu.edu, and our current students can be reached at MBA GA at stern.nyu.edu. These are current students, both focused MBA and full-time two-year MBA students who work in the admissions office, answering prospective student questions and sharing their experiences with you. They're an excellent resource. I highly recommend reaching out to them if you have any questions. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to see what questions we have in the comments. And I will do my best, like I said, to answer as many questions as possible. All right, so give me one moment while I review the questions that we have here. I see several. A question around, is it necessary to include our photo in the Pick 6 photos? Absolutely not. Many people don't include a picture of themselves. Really, whatever you are comfortable with. These don't even have to be personal photos that you have taken yourself. I should emphasize that what we are, again, looking for is just things that represent you and your interests. We're not necessarily looking for pictures of you or, again, personal photos. We're also not judging the composition of those photos. We're really focusing on content more than the visual itself. The visual aspect of this is just meant to be a fun and creative way for you to submit this essay. Let's see. So what about the tech or fashion and luxury MBA? Question one, is it different from the full-time MBA other than the 1 year versus 2 years? There are a few key similarities and key differences. The similarities are definitely the tight-knit community, support from the careers team to help you advance your careers. Many of the courses are similar. The faculty is the same. Access to clubs and extracurriculars on campus is all of the same across all of our programs. The differences, I would say, in a word could be, or in a few words, can be summed up as what experience are you looking for? Are you looking for that hallmark 2-year MBA or the traditional 2-year MBA where it's a much larger program? You want that summer internship and you want a little bit more breadth in the available coursework that you're taking, a little more flexibility in elective coursework, or are you looking for depth in any one particular field? Are you looking to really dive deep on the intersection of tech and business or the intersection of luxury goods and business and specify in one of those two areas? If that's the case, maybe the 1-year MBA programs are a better fit for you. If you're looking for more breadth, maybe the 2-year MBA. I'll also say the 2-year has a little bit more room, or certainly more room for flexibility, right? If you decide after your summer internship that, maybe the professional field that I thought I wanted isn't really what I want, there's certainly room to pivot in the 2-year MBA program, where, like I said, for the 1 year, it's really for those focused on either the tech industry or the fashion and luxury industry. All right, I have a question here about work experience, and do students with 2 years or less than the average of years of work experience at Stern have a chance? Absolutely. At Stern, the average number of years of work experience that we have is about 5 years for the incoming 2-year MBA class. It's pretty consistent for the focused MBAs as well, 5 to 6 years. I would say focus less on that number itself, the average. And when you're putting your application forward, focus on why now is the right time for you to pursue an MBA. If that's after 2 years and you've reached a point in your career where the MBA can help you accelerate the field that you're in or help you pivot to a new field that you're interested in, and you're able to succinctly summarize the transferable skills that you have, and again, why everything you've done in the following 2 years has led you to an MBA program, and now is the time, then I think that's okay. 2 years is certainly enough to pursue an MBA. On the other side of the spectrum, if you have 10, 12, 15 years of work experience, and now is the point in your career where an MBA is the right choice, same story, right? As long as you're able to tell the story about why now, in a way that makes sense to the admissions committee, go for it. I think it's a perfect time to submit your MBA application. Is NYU test optional for all MBA programs in the 2023-24 admissions cycle? So for this year, we are test optional for the Tech MBA only. That is the only program where you are not required to submit a standardized test. The full-time 2-year MBA program and the fashion and luxury MBA program have a required standardized test component. However, I mentioned on our website, there is a form to fill out a standardized test request or waiver request. And if approved prior to submitting your application, if approved, you're able to waive the standardized test requirement, but only with prior approval. A question around recommendations and letter or EQ endorsements. Can you ask a prior supervisor if you've recently switched jobs and you haven't been at your new organization for very long? Absolutely. I think that would be an appropriate time to ask a prior supervisor for a recommendation rather than your current supervisor. Some other examples of when it might be appropriate to ask someone other than your current supervisor is when your job or a promotion might be in jeopardy, right? And you don't want, if you inform your current employer that you are pursuing a business education or would like to pursue an MBA program. Some other times it might be appropriate to ask someone else. Maybe you don't have a current supervisor, right? Maybe you are an entrepreneur and you are your own boss. In that case, it might be appropriate to ask a client, a business partner, or someone like that. And there are some other situations where I'm sure I'm forgetting right now, but there's room in the application to provide an explanation for why you did not ask your current supervisor if you submit an endorsement from someone else. Will all seats be filled in the first 2 or 3 rounds, or does Stern reserve some spots for the last round? Like I said, a strong application is a strong application regardless of when you submit your application. In short, there will always be seats for the strongest applicants. But at Stern, you have to remember we have a wait list at Stern for all of our full-time programs. We definitely utilize the wait list across all of our programs. So for that reason, there will be spots available throughout the entire admissions cycle, even for those who are applying for the final deadline for our programs. Let's see, I see a few other questions here. I think I have time for one more before our time is over. Are students who did a 3-year undergrad from other countries at a disadvantage because they don't have 4 years of study? Absolutely not. So when reviewing your academic profiles, you have to remember that at Stern, we get applications from candidates all over the world. We are well versed in academic systems from across the globe. So what I mean by that is we do not prefer a 4-year degree over a 3. We know that many countries and educational systems have 3-year degrees. We also know that many have different grading scales and grading systems, and we are well versed in those as well. So no need to convert your your GPA, or your performance to the usual 4.0 US grading scale. All right, so that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully you have, walk away with some tips and tricks, and don't forget to like this video. Thank you, and I look forward to reading all of your applications this year.